Every winter, my garden turns into a forest of fava beans. They grow tall, they grow lush and full of promise until last year when they didn't. I had all this green growth, but barely any beans. I thought the soil was rich enough, but I was wrong. I'd overfed them with nitrogen and they just crept growing leaves and no pods. That's when I learned the golden rule. Fava beans don't need much fertilizer, but they need the right kind at the right time. So in today's video, I'll show you exactly how I fertilize the fava beans organically, what I add before planting, what I feed during flowering, and one natural secret that doubles your pod production. And if you think fava beans feed themselves, wait till you see how much difference one organic tweak can make. Fava beans are part of the legume family. That means that they make their own nitrogen through tiny nodules on their roots in partnership with soil bacteria called rhizobium. So unlike lettuce or cabbage, they don't need heavy feeding. In fact, too much nitrogen stops pod formation completely. And that's why I never use high nitrogen fertilizers like chicken manure or fresh compost, because they'll give you the jungle of leaves but not a single bean. Get this wrong and your plant will look different right up until harvest time, when you start to realize there's nothing to harvest. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the pre-planting soil prep that I do. And before I plant, I focus on building balanced living soil. So here is my exact mix per square meter. You could also find that in the description box below this video for reference. You need 1 bucket of mature compost or even aged cow manure, which is low in nitrogen. You also need a handful of rock dust. If you don't have it, you can substitute it for volcanic minerals. You need a handful of wood ash, which adds potassium and calcium, well as a sprinkling of dolomite lime if the soil is acidic. Then I just go in, I gently rake it, I water it with compost tea, and what this does is it preps the soil with everything my fava bean needs, except nitrogen, because they'll create that themselves, just like peas. And when I started doing this, the difference was incredible. I got stronger stems, fewer pests, and the beans that tasted buttery instead of bitter. So let's talk about my mid-season fertilizing routine that I'm so happy to share with you today. And once the plants are knee-high and they start flowering, they need an extra push, not for growth, but for energy. And here is what I do to feed them. I start off with 1 watering can, which is around 10 liters of diluted seaweed solution. So I just add in 1 cup of diluted seaweed solution per liter of water, and that's a 10 liter of water. And that's what I use. If I don't have that on hand, I would substitute it with the weak compost tea brew, which is a dilution of 1 to 10. And as an option, I add in a spoon of molasses to feed the soil microbes. And then I apply this once every 2 to 3 weeks from flowering to pod fill. And it's like giving them a vitamin boost, not a heavy meal. And I learned that timing matters more than quantity. So if you feed too early, they'll get lazy with nitrogen fixing. If you feed up bloom, you'll see the pods appear like magic. And if your fava bean plant flowers beautifully but drops their blooms, the chances are that they're missing that potassium kick, not the water. Now let's talk about water and mulch management, because fava beans love moist, cool soil, not soggy and not too dry. I water deeply once or twice a week, and it does depend on the rain and on the heat as well, and how the weather has been looking like throughout the week. And I also mulch with straw. If I don't have straw on hand, I always substitute it for sugar cane mulch in order to keep the roots cool. And the mulch does more than retain the water. Its role here is to protect the beneficial microbes that help beans fix nitrogen. And every time I pull back that much, I see healthy soil alive with worms, and that's how I know I'm feeding the ecosystem, not just the plants. I always try to remind myself a healthy garden isn't just grown, it's coached. You still feed the soil and the soil feeds the beans. So let's talk about the secret bloom booster, which is a natural organic way. So here's my secret. I'm ready to break it up to you. It is banana peel tea. I soak banana peels in water for 2 days. Then I go ahead and I strain. I use the liquid as a potassium booster when the plants start flowering. And that natural potassium helps the pods form stronger and become more full. It's cheap, it's simple, and it's my favorite zero waste garden hack. And I used to buy fancy bloom boosters. Now I just use what's in my kitchen and the results are even more better. So with that being said, here's some tips to do after the harvest. After harvesting, I never pull out the plants. I cut them at the base. I leave the roots in the soil. Those roots are packed with nitrogen, so they'll break down slowly and they'll feed my next crop naturally. Then I add a thin layer of compost on top, cover with mulch, and let the bed rest. That's the beauty of organic gardening. Nothing goes to waste. Here I started leaving roots in. My next crop of greens exploded with growth and I didn't even need to fertilize at all. So that's how I fertilize my fava beans naturally, not by feeding the plant, but by feeding the soil. It's simple. There's less nitrogen, more minerals, and timing everything with nature's rhythm. And if this video has helped you in any way, hit the like, hit the subscribe, share it with a gardener who thinks fava beans just grow themselves. Because the truth is, a little care goes a long way. And next week, I'll show you how I make the fava bean compost booster, which is a natural soil enhancer from the leftover pots and leaves. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and have a great day. All the best.